I now invite Dr. Womack to come up, and this is a session about what the world has learnt in trying to implement lean and how it's moved from just tools to lean management. Of course, that realization is not there, but that's what Dr. Womack seeks to create with this presentation.
Just a few minutes to talk about how we get from lean tools to lean management. It's been very interesting for me just to listen today that when I was here in 2002, it was mostly car people. It's car people. I like car people. They're good people. Fun people if you like cars. But it was car people. And they wanted to talk about high-volume, discrete parts manufacturing. And then today we've heard from this company that makes small amounts infrequently. And we've heard this lovely medical story. And so that makes me very happy that these ideas have now spread to all kinds of industries. And so this is a very good thing indeed. And I hope that will continue. There are folks in the room I've talked to who are in an industry where no one has yet perhaps tried this. I hope you'll be the first. That would be a very good thing. And as I tell everybody, if you will do something brilliant, I will put you in a book. I will come see you and I will put you in a book and I will make you famous. No charge. And I want no financial connection with you. But when I look out at the lean movement across the world, what I see is what I call the age of tools. The tool age, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age. Well, here we are in the tool age. And that's not a bad thing. And I have to even take responsibility for one of those tools, the value stream map, that I had known how Toyota portrayed on a single piece of paper a process, known this for years. I had not really thought very much about it because this came naturally to me. I didn't quite know it, but it's the way I always thought. And so when I saw Toyota managers drawing these little maps, they would go take a walk and look at something, and I would say, well, what did you see? This is very important. What did you see? They would get out their pen and a piece of paper and draw a little map. And those maps, I decided I should tell the world about. And by the way, Toyota did not object. I showed it to the chairman of Toyota, and he said, why didn't someone write this up before? It's not a problem. And so we filled the world with maps. And, of course, the problem is that maps are not the same thing as reality. It turns out to be a lot easier to draw a map than it is to actually sustainably fix something. And this map, let me use as an example. Remember I said that the whole idea of a map is to connect information and action. That's what a map is about. And that's control information at the top. Anyway, some product, software is itself just information coded. But I'm not talking about that kind of information. I'm talking about how did the different people working in a software development process know what to do and when to do it. And by the way, how did they do it? That's what these little boxes are about. How many mistakes, how much time, how many times you got it right the first time, what your changeover time was, what your availability is, what your capability is, and so forth. So these little maps are now everywhere. And I think most people are familiar with them. If you're not familiar in your industry, well, just give it a try. Have to start somewhere. Get a piece of paper. I would recommend a pencil. Take a walk. Don't ask somebody to bring the reality to you. You should go to the reality. And by the way, the process is what it is. It is never the way it is supposed to be. It is never the way the chairman probably thinks it is. We had a lovely example which Dan Jones, my co-author, was called in on the Blue Ribbon Committee at Airbus on what went wrong with the wiring system on the A380. And they had a process for how they were developing the wiring system that was German and probably the most fully detailed, mapped process of how it was supposed to work. And as the engineers got started, they quickly discovered it couldn't work that way. They also discovered that French software and German software wouldn't speak to each other. And pretty soon they were just making it up, which is to say they lost control of the whole design process, which then imploded, and the airplanes are 2 years late and billions of dollars of cost. So how the process is supposed to work is not the point. It is how today, right now, with me taking a walk, does it work? Let's all talk about this. And by the way, when you take one of these walks, everybody who touches it has to go with you, because then we can immediately have the discussion about, well, I thought, well, you thought, well, I thought, well, you thought, that's what I thought you were doing, and it all just bubbles up to the surface. And then we say, stop looking at each other. Let's together look at the process. Let's cut out the one who and ask about the 5 whys. So this is a good thing. I mean, it really is a good thing. And it's a current state, how things are. And this is sort of a vision of how, Here's a future state in which all kinds of good lean things have been done, converted from a push system to a pull system, that all kinds of capability and availability and adequacy issues have been dealt with. And the actual individual steps have been turned into a cell, so they all happen continuously, and the throughput time has been reduced by 75%, and the number of people required to operate this process has been cut in half, and the capital investment's been reduced, and so on. And those are all, at least potentially, good things. But here's what I see now when I walk around. I want you to understand, I'm not a consultant, but I need to check on reality. And so companies call me and say, we think we're doing the lean thing, would you come take a look? And I say, sure, send a plane ticket if I've got time. And if it's an industry I don't know much about, so much the better, because I'm always trying to learn. So recently, the top fellow in a great big company, actually one of the world's bigger companies, called up and said, we're doing a lean campaign, and I need a second opinion. I want you to come and take a look. And this was an industry I really didn't know very much about, so I thought, well, that sounds good. And then, look, I'm human, I'm weak, I'm mortal. He said, I will pick you up in my Falcon 900, which is a 3-engine French corporate jet. And by the way, a lovely thing. So he said, I will pick you up, and we will go together to another country to see what is going on. And so when we got to this country, a major manufacturing facility, we walked in, and there in the lobby, on the left side of the door that goes into the actual factory where the actual value is created, on the left wall is an enormous value stream map for one of the product families going through this factory. It's beautiful. Not only is it beautiful, it's been laminated. It's there apparently to stay for a while. And on the right side is the future state map, which has also been laminated, and it is quite beautiful as art. The kind of thing you'd want to reduce in size a bit, take home, and put in your living room, right, if you're a lean kind of guy. So I looked at it, and I said, well, let me ask you a couple of questions about this. Do you know what? Does anybody have a thought about what I ask? Anybody have an idea? I'm standing there. Wait a minute. This is theater. Here's the scene. Here's the poor plant manager. Here's this poor guy who's never seen Mr. Big Cheese, Mr. Truly High-Priced Help. So here's Mr. Truly High-Priced Help in his fancy suit and his fancy airplane in a different country with Mr. Plant Manager who's actually got to create some value. So the scene, I'm trying to do this in a kind way, but I really need to ask some questions. That's what I do. I ask questions. Do you know what I ask? Well, first thing I said, what's the problem? What's the problem that these maps are supposed to help you solve? Specifically, what's the business problem? What about what you're doing for the customer for this product is a problem? That the cost is too high, response time's too long, output rate's not high enough, quality's not right, flexibility's not there to quickly go from this product family had long ones and short ones and green ones and blue ones. What is the problem you were trying to solve? And the plant manager said, well, of course we want to do better on all those criteria. That would be excellent. We certainly intend to do that and so forth. I said, no, wait a minute. I said, what's the problem? I'm sure there are many things you could do better, but what's the problem? Well, poor guy. I said, okay, let's not. I said, by the way, who's responsible for this? Did you draw this map? said, oh, no, I didn't draw this map. One of my people drew this map. And I said, oh, really, where's their name? There's no name on this. There's nobody responsible. And then, by the way, there's no date. I mean, this is really very curious. There's no date. Did this happen today, yesterday, last week, last year, last decade? And then over on the other side of the wall, over on this future state, who is going to do what when to get from the left side to the right side, and how will you know you've done it? There's no, this is a game without a scoreboard. Okay, how do you know whether you're winning or losing? And by the way, my guess is you're going to tell me you're winning because there's no definition of what winning is. And I know your boss will like that. Well, poor guy. I mean, look, I was a little bit gentler because it's not the plant manager's fault. And also, I turned to the truly high-priced help and said, this isn't a technical problem. This is a management problem. That your company apparently doesn't know how to decide what your problem is. You don't know how to make people responsible. You don't know how to come up with a plan on who's going to do what, and you don't know how to collect evidence on whether you're winning or losing. So this gentleman, your plant manager, is a hero, but where is your management system? This guy's doing the best he can. I finally said, by the way, Mr. Plant Manager, why did you do this? And now he's feeling a little better, and he said, because corporate said we all have to draw maps. Headquarters said we all have to draw maps. Isn't that sad? I mean, you've been there, haven't you? Some of you have been there. Maybe some of you were at headquarters sending out the orders. We're going to be a modern, lean company, and so we're going to draw maps. Okay, so that's kind of what I feel about where we stand right now. For the industries that have been at this for a while, there's some of you that are newcomers, and great, you haven't made any mistakes yet, so you can learn from this. But the issue is what we're going to do about management. Okay? We got plenty of tools. And if you don't have enough, you can buy some more on your way out. You could get a whole trunk of your car full of tools. Okay? Take them home, shine them up, put them on the wall. We got plenty of tools. What we lack is a way to think about management. And so let me just take the next 20 minutes to think a little bit about where we need to migrate in terms of management. As I said this morning, I suspect most of you are modern managers. And that's a good thing. Maybe some of you even have certificates from business schools that say you're modern managers. You have a diploma. Keep it in your office and say, that's me, I'm a modern manager. And that's okay. But modern management was largely invented by Alfred Sloan and then elaborated and modified by a lot of people, General Electric, IBM, and so forth, to fit different kinds of business circumstances. But the characteristics of modern management, which is management that can deal with variety. Remember, Henry Ford couldn't deal with variety. You all have to deal with variety. Big companies spread all over the place, all across the world, is that you have very clear grants of authority. We always know whose department it is. When I said to that fellow, who's responsible for this map, that map ran all the way across the production operation through about 8 departments. There's the problem. So each department, they have authority for this. This is stamping, this is welding, this is painting, this is final assembly. So we know who has the authority, and we don't know who's got the responsibility. Apparently nobody. And that's what modern management was very good at doing, was giving grants of authority. And of course, planning from the top down, there's always a plan that comes down from the top, right? And loan managers increasingly judged on results because management above needs to know how you're doing, and so they create a scoreboard. And since management above can't actually know much about your process, what they want to judge is your results, what we call management by results. And that's what I talked about as rear view mirror, end of the quarter, end of the year management. Make your numbers. And by the way, if you don't know how to fix the process, because the process is what's creating the results, just fix the results. And we all know that there are ways to game the system. It's a lot easier to fix the scoreboard than it is to learn how to play the game. right? So that's what people do. And these are not bad people. They're just people trapped in a situation where they can't, they think, do anything about the process, but they've got to get a good score or they even lose their job and they certainly don't get their bonus. And we get into the world of false victory, where people have figured out how to play the game. With that goes the generalist manager, who is rotated frequently, and you begin to judge your career success by your velocity of job change. You got to keep moving, getting your picket punched, move around, gaining altitude. And then that leads to a situation where decisions more and more are made using data and metrics that are far, far from the point of the real issue. This is conference room PowerPoint management. Let's all go in the conference room and get our PowerPoint and see who's got the best PowerPoint. My PowerPoint's better than your PowerPoint, so I got promoted. You need to learn more about PowerPoint. And then who's going to solve problems when there are problems? And in any business, including Toyota, there are always problems every day. So who's going to solve the problems and who's responsible for improvement? And the answer is the improvement staff. We will have the staff. And the line of management says, well, not my problem, because we've got an improvement staff. And if it doesn't work, it must be those guys didn't know what they were doing. And now we've got the perfect situation in which everybody has somebody else to blame. Okay? So everybody can figure out the one who. And then what you've got, as I said this morning, as you build these organizations, is a loss of process focus, and typically a loss of responsiveness, velocity, flexibility, and so forth. Okay. So how can we do better? Well, my hero here is a gentleman named Eiji Toyoda, 95 years old, and very tottering, doesn't appear in public. But he is the guy who in the 50s and 60s created an alternative management system that I call lean management, which is different. Now, by the way, this is not easy. What I'm about to tell you is not easy, but think about it. Think about your management system, and I don't know anything about any of your management systems. I think I have not been to see a single company in this audience except Amazon and not in India. So I don't know anything about you, not pretending to. But they came up with a different process, and you know a little bit of the story. But up at the top, they said that plans without feedback loops are worthless. So instead of the top-down plan, let's have policy deployment, in which someone at the top says to someone just below, what do you think our problems are? And let's decide what our most important problems are, and then you dialogue a bit. And then you get to some agreement with the senior team about what your problems are. And by the way, you can only solve a few problems at a time. Most organizations have many more initiatives than can ever produce any results because it just dissipates energy. There are important problems. By the way, Toyota in their annual report every year lists the company's 3 most important problems. You won't see anybody else doing that. Very interesting. And that's through a process of people at the very top say, we can see further. We're on the bridge, and we can see things happening out there, but we don't know anything about the engine that has to propel the ship. And the problems probably have to do with the engine, given where we have to go, but we don't know anything about the engine. What do you think down there? So it is a dialogue loop, and it goes on at multiple levels to decide what's important and then prioritize and deselect. The trick is you can only fix a certain number of problems at a given time. Most organizations have 100 problems they're working on, and they'll fix about 1% of each problem. If you had one problem you were working on, you might actually fix 100% of the problem. So that's the top. But now we get to the interesting part that all problems are actually resolved by someone who takes responsibility. And this is a fundamental difference in modern management versus lean management. That we know that authority is vertical. I'm in charge of this department, you're in charge of that department, he's in charge of the third department. But funny thing, the process that's causing the problem runs across. So therefore, who's responsible? And so one way to do it is to create a new set of managers over here and then put everybody in the organization in a matrix. So we have the product line manager here and the engineering director here, and you're the engineer here, and you're on the product team and you report to the engineering director, so you have two bosses. Congratulations and good luck. Okay, there's no way to figure out who's the important boss. It's all politics. So, good luck. But now we have an automatic excuse for every person that the other boss told me to do something different. So Toyota World said, no, let's not do that. Let's give someone responsibility for each of the problems that we have said are problems. And let's give them no authority. No authority. Please, young man, come in and solve this problem, which you have no authority whatsoever for. How would you do that? You say to your boss, and your boss says, well, you have to know more about the problem than anybody else. And you actually have to get everybody to talk about the problem to a point where you get agreement on what the problem is and what to do about it, which is to say you need to manufacture the authority to solve this problem. Now, this is upside down and backwards, I understand. You're saying we could never do this in our organization, we can't even think about this, but do think about it. This is very interesting. Authority is vertical, responsibility is horizontal. Most organizations are almost lacking responsibility and are overwhelmed with authority. So just think in your organization about what your key problems are. I guarantee they are the result of some malfunctioning process. In most cases, that process flows across several parts of the organization. And by the way, no one right now is responsible. That it's an orphan, that problem. And look, again, something else that you may find just almost offensive. Mr. Cho, who is now the chairman of Toyota, called me many years ago. I had written an article about the fact that the very smartest gaijin foreigners were leaving Toyota. And the specific example was my colleague John Shook, who's been working with us for the last 11 years after he left Toyota. And I had written somewhere in a publication that the head of Toyota at that time in North America, now the chairman of the company, had read and said, Woman-san, he called me, you don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, you'll never conquer the world, Toyota, because you're not keeping the smartest, most brilliant people. And he said, well, you know, brilliance is overrated because most brilliance is in isolation. There is nothing more useless than the isolated genius. That all organizational life is about a lot of people working together. And what I get at my company is brilliant results from average people managing and improving brilliant processes. In my competitors, this was elsewhere in the car industry, I see brilliant people every day working their way around broken processes. And then when they fail, they fire those people who they thought were brilliant and hire even more brilliant people. Okay, and then he slapped the table. He actually came to see me. He slapped the table at that point and said, I will win. That was 1994. That was 14 years ago. So a very curious idea. By the way, this is a country of brilliant people. I lived here for a year in 1971, and I said I'd just never seen a place with so many brilliant people. But not everything works. I just noticed after I'd been here for a year that not every single thing worked. And then I went to Japan where the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. And look, I don't want to live there. You don't want to live there. I feel more comfortable here than I do there. But there was something to be said for things working. So I don't mean to give offense to any of you brilliant people. I know you're all above average. You're all, in fact, quite brilliant. But the question is whether brilliant people acting in isolation can actually solve problems, or whether they can just be brilliant. So something to think about. And just a couple of more things to think about, and then I will be through. Here's the rest of the Toyota management system, which is so simple it's almost embarrassing. And it goes like this, that you simply can't solve a problem if you aren't standing next to the problem. And so the number one rule of management, and particularly a person who's asked to take responsibility for a problem, is go see. get out of the conference room, go see. When you get to the problem, you ask why. And you ask why, and you ask why, because, in fact, the superficial problem is almost always not the problem. So you keep asking why. And by the way, you don't know why. The manager does not know the answer. Collectively, the people working the process can find the answer. But you as the boss or the person coming in from the top, you do not know the answer. And as you're asking why, you need to show respect. That we have in America this terrible idea about respect for people means that you're always congratulating them and reinforcing their self-image and patting them on the head and giving them bonuses for nothing, just for being there. That's showing respect for people. And if you're out in the shop floor and you're in a union environment, well, not pointing out that things aren't going right is showing respect for people, being polite. And Toyota, they taught me this directly years ago, they said the way you show respect for people is you say to the people that are working for you, working with you, I'm going to ask you some really hard questions. I do not know the answers. And you're going to, with your colleagues, figure out the answers because I respect you. I believe you have good intent, and I believe you can figure out the answer because together you're really smart. Now that's respect for people as they look at it, which is totally different from what Americans anyway are used to. And then, by the way, once you have looked at a problem and you've manufactured agreement on what the problem is, what to do about it, you figured out who's going to do what, when, and in fact you fix it, how are you going to sustain it? And the answer is that everything connected with that process has to be standardized. And by the way, that's not standardized by the industrial engineer. That's not standardized by the boss. You say to the people, let's do this the best way. Once we agree, we write it down, and we all pledge to do it that way and only that way until we get together again and think of a better way to do it. And what you're trying to do actually is cut out wasted brilliance, where people are doing clever workarounds right now on a problem, rather than doing clever analysis of what the problem is so it goes away and you never have it again. People desperately want to have their own fiddle to work around the problem. That's easy, but you have the same problem tomorrow and the next day, and in fact the process deteriorates. So, that's Toyota System. Well, to progress toward it, just to summarize what I said this morning, that you have to get some agreement on what your purpose is, in this case, what the problem is. And then you have to know what the process is that's causing this, and someone has to take responsibility, and that's what people do in a lean organization, is get people to take responsibility. Let me not talk about that for a second, except to draw your attention to this final point down here about problem-solving methods. Toyota does have a method. It's called A3, piece of paper. On your first day on the job at Toyota in Japan as a manager, you are given a blank piece of paper at your desk. That's all you have. And up in the upper left-hand corner, your boss has written an issue. It's written down an issue. It's a question. Is our translation process for the new plant in Malaysia adequate? It's just a question. This is the first thing you do on your first day. I've observed this. Boss has written down a question. You know nothing whatever about this, and you have no responsibility for it. And this is the beginning of your management education. Please tell me, do we have a problem? Then if we do have a problem, what is the problem? And by the way, how do you know that's what the problem is compared to what you just quickly guessed? And then, by the way, what is it about the process that's causing the problem, and how do you know that? And then, by the way, what should we do about this, and why do you think we should do that rather than a half a dozen other possibilities? In fact, please get me a half a dozen alternatives. And then, if this is really what we should do, who is going to do what when? And then how are you going to manufacture the agreement to get it done. And then how will you know when we've solved the problem? What will be the evidence that we can all look at? And that's A3. One piece of paper. This is Dr. Deming's PDA cycle. On one piece of paper that can be posted on the wall for everybody to see. And that's the real heart of the management system. How to solve a problem, how to deploy something new, use the exact same thing. What is it new that we need to do? Why do we need to do that? What's the problem it's solving? And so forth. It looks like that. And you can't read it, but you don't need to, because I'm just going to tell you that A3, you always write the problem up in this corner. It's always due to some sort of process issue, and there's a better process up in that corner, and there's a little chart on who's going to do what when. And then down at the bottom, there's the evidence we're going to collect that we actually solved the problem. We can all agree. We can all agree we solved the problem. So you have policy deployment at the top to decide what problems need to be solved. You have A3, which is how we solve problems and do new things. And then we have standardization, standardized work with standard management. That's another long topic, don't have time today, but standard management, it's a very real thing that you need to know about. Put it all together, and you've got lean management. Go see, ask why, show respect, average people doing brilliant things, and you'll win. So, that's the Toyota system. Took me a long time to figure it out, and that therefore saves you potentially lots of time. Right now, we're getting ready to publish a book, and I'm sure it'll be available here very shortly, Sandy. It's called Managing to Learn, which my colleague, John Shook, smartest guy Toyota ever hired, I think, has written, which explains this whole thing. And here's my great fear, that it describes how to do A3. And my fear is this will be the ultimate and worst tool. That in addition to all of that corporate wallpaper in the form of value stream maps, we will now have more corporate wallpaper in the form of A3s done by someone sitting by themselves in an office, making things up because headquarters said we all have to do A3. Okay? So you heard it here first, and what you heard is don't do that. And you also heard, not here first, but you did hear, that tools, by the way, are necessary. Lean tools are wonderful. They're right out in the lobby. But they are never, ever, ever sufficient to create a lean business unless you have lean management to go with it. And by the way, tools are easy. And by the way, management's hard. Because if you're going to actually have management, you have to talk to each other. The great thing about tools is that the lone carpenter with his hammer can bang away all day. Don't have to talk to anybody, deal with any of that problem called human nature. Whereas real management can't be done in a conference room with data. It has to be done at the Gemba with facts. And that's hard for all of us. But that is what we need to do now.